Why, hello there. How's it going? Welcome to D&D Optimized, a part of the D4 network, the show where each week we take a deep dive into one, sometimes two, specific character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we theorycraft about them, we crunch some numbers, and basically just try to create a character that is both really fun and also really powerful to play in D&D. So, if you enjoy creating characters for Dungeons & Dragons almost as much as you enjoy playing the game itself, then welcome home. This is where you belong. And we are super happy to have you, so thanks for being here. My name's Colby, and I'll be your host. Today is my 1-year anniversary of launching this channel. 1 year ago today, I launched the channel, and if someone would have told me back then that a year later I would be getting close to 20,000 subscribers, I never would have believed it. So it has been a great ride. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot more time consuming and I guess stressful actually than I probably would have predicted also. But it's been just super rewarding, super fulfilling. And I feel like I owe all of that to you guys. So I cannot express my gratitude enough to you for all of your support. Thank you. I love you all madly. And I look forward to the years to come. So anyway, thank you. And let's jump into the episode. I've been thinking for quite some time about, what I should do for my 1-year anniversary episode. And I kind of feel like I have to do a Bladesinger, right? And I'm really excited about that because, okay, in case you don't know, and I can't imagine that if you're watching this video, you don't, but, I really love Bladesingers. I have not made that a secret. And yes, my Bladesinger 2.0 video, which I'll point to there, but I'm guessing the vast majority of you have seen already because it's easily been like my most popular video, I suppose, on the channel. I've played 2 Bladesingers actually in different campaigns over the last year and a half or so, and they have been by far my favorite to play in 5e. Just from a pure mechanics perspective, but also just from a fun perspective, right? Most of you know, I guess thematically, I would say monks are my favorite. I love monks. I love the concept of a monk, but it's hard to make them really good, in my opinion, in D&D. And so, Bladesingers are just, they're the bee's knees. There's just something about a spellblade. There's something about being able to wade into the middle of combat, dish out some really strong melee damage, be incredibly hard to hit, and then also have all of the amazing versatility and power that comes from access to the best spell list in the game that wizards get access to, right? I think since Tasha's, most people are finally coming around to the idea of just how powerful a subclass this can be, and even realizing finally, I think that yes, they're not just a wizard caster who happens to have some great defensive capabilities, but they can actually keep up with the best melee damage dealers in the game as well if you build them right. All of that said, I've never actually done a single other character build that even dips into Bladesinger, other than the one Bladesinger video that I've done. Okay, I've done 2 Bladesinger videos, but it's basically 1.0 and 2.0 of essentially the same build, right? I guess my reasoning is this. A big part of what makes Bladesingers so great, as many like to say, is that they are a wizard. It's the amazing and high level spells. What's more, they also gain a lot of power by increasing their Bladesinger levels, not just from the spells and higher level spell slots, right? But also by picking up their amazing extra attack at level 6 and extra damage per hit at level 14, among other things. And so for those reasons, it's always been really difficult for me to justify multiclassing with a Bladesinger. I know that's kind of an insane thing to hear come out of my mouth, that the guy who basically multiclasses always and forever. One of the most common comments I get on that Bladesinger 2.0 video is something like, why not multiclass with fighter, or why not multiclass with artificer in order to pick up, XYZ? And my response is usually something like, you could, but I just can't stomach delaying extra attack or animate objects or etc, etc, etc. So today, we're going to multi-class a Bladesinger. So, okay, here's the thing. When it comes to characters with high sustained damage per round, which, as most of you know, tends to be like the most common character I create, then yes, it is really hard to justify, in my opinion, getting sidetracked with multi-classing for Bladesinger. But what if you were trying to build a Bladesinger that was made for Nova damage or burst damage? In that case, I could definitely see dipping into another class or two as being justified. A quick word about Nova damage builds or burst damage builds. For those who aren't familiar with the concept, really quickly, a Nova or burst damage character is one who's designed to deal like a ton of damage in one big turn with the intent to eliminate an enemy or maybe even two or more, right? Early on in the fight, ideally, usually at the cost of a bunch of resources, in order to like tip the scales in your party's favor. So you get a numbers advantage. Or, of course, against a big boss, kind of in hopes of eliminating or almost eliminating, that boss, doing a ton of damage to him so that your party has a much more likely chance of taking them out before they get wiped out themselves. So that's what I'm going for with this character today. But there is something else that I wanted to build this character around. My favorite spell in all of 5th edition, I think, is Shadowblade. I don't really know why, except maybe it just comes from my love of lightsabers. I just get like all weak in the knees at the thought of summoning a magical blade of like pure energy and just dancing and weaving through my foes, slicing and dicing while my blade hums and sings. For me, it's like the pinnacle of the combat experience in D&D. And in the 2.0 Bladesinger video that I did, I kind of got away from Shadowblade as our go-to weapon. That's always bugged me, really, ever since. It's been 9 months since I did that video. So my goal for the build today, in addition to creating a Nova damage Bladesinger, is to bring back Shadowblade. I appreciate that as magical weapons enter the game, Shadowblade potentially loses some of its advantage that it has early on, but we're going to stick with it regardless because I love it so much. Alternatively, maybe if you get some say in the magic items that you get at your table, whether through crafting or purchasing, you can use your attunement slots and your gold on other great magic items like armor, more defensive, or utility items. I got a Cloak of Displacement on the first Bladesinger that I ever played, and it was ridiculously overpowered and lots of fun. So, preamble complete. I am proud to present episode 52, The Bladesinger Nova, Return of the Shadowblade. And check out the art by Randall Hampton. He is a friend of mine, and we've done some collaborations together, and he likes to do drawings for episodes sometimes. I really loved this one. I love the kind of dwarf look to it. Usually, historically, we always thought of Bladesingers as elves, but not this one. So thank you, Randall. Thought it was fantastic. You can follow Randall. I'll post links to his social media pages and stuff in the video description. Before we jump into the build, of course, I do need to have a word from our sponsor. I've talked about Druids, Secrets of the Primal Circle by Homebrew Games few times now in videos. Their Kickstarter has been incredibly successful. They blew past their $15,000 goal, so the project is officially backed. If you love Druids, you've got to get this book because it is the Druid compendium to end all Druid compendiums for 5th edition as far as I'm concerned. I've talked about the new Dire Druid class that they introduced, which I think is a lot of fun, really cool. I've talked about some of the new spells. I've talked about some of the additional lore and like background features that they have. Today, I was going to highlight the new subclasses, the Druid circles that they include in this book, of which there are no fewer than 12. But instead, at the last minute, I changed my mind and decided to highlight the one Ranger subclass. They do include a new Ranger subclass in this book. It's really cool. It's called the Greenwood Ranger. And it's basically for those who really love treants and have always wanted to play a treant in-game. Over the course of the Greenwood Ranger's career, they become more and more tree-like, starting at level 3 with a feature called Tough Hide that increases your armor class and actually reduces bludgeoning or piercing damage dealt to you by a little bit. And then by level 15, you are literally no longer a humanoid, but you are a plant creature. You can even sprout a third limb that you can use to wield a shield or another weapon or something like that. It's super unique and fun and flavorful. So, every Treebeard lover should absolutely want to play a Greenwood Ranger, I think. You should check it out, go back them, follow the link that I'm going to put in the video description to get to their Kickstarter page. And thanks again to Matt and Seamus for being my first ever video sponsor. I've had a pleasure working with you guys, and I'm very impressed by the book. So anyway, congratulations to you guys on hitting your goal. All right, let's jump into the episode. All right. At level 1 for your class, you're going to go fighter. If you're going to Nova build, it's really hard not to take some fighter levels. And if you're going to take some fighter levels in your build, and concentrating on spells is really important to you, like it is for us, it's hard not to start with fighter, in my opinion, because among other things, you get proficiency in your Constitution saving throws, which means your concentration checks. So we're starting fighter. As for the race, surprising no one, I'm going to recommend Custom Lineage. The truth is there are a lot of great options that you could take instead, of course, especially if you get a free feat at your table. I would probably actually go with Mountain Dwarf, like Randall's artwork. So I think he kind of predicted my alternative suggestion maybe a little bit. Bladesingers are notoriously stat hungry, and +2 to stats that Mountain Dwarfs get is just awesome. Putting a +2 to Dex and Intelligence would be great. I would love to be able to do that. But we do get a lot of mileage out of the free feat that we take. As for the free feat, I'm going to recommend that we go with Gunner. Yes, you heard that right, Gunner. Now, before you get too excited, I have no plans to use firearms with this character. I know, it seems ridiculous that you would take a Gunner feat in that case. This is a feat that I've never used in a build before, though a couple in the past might have been able to benefit from it slightly, but I think the main reason is because for whatever reason, when I think of D&D, I just do not think of firearms. And, yes, before you ask, I do plan on doing a firearms-based build one day. It's on the list. But that day is not today. We do get 2 fantastic things out of Gunner. First of all, we get a +1 to our dexterity. It's a half feat. That's amazing. And second, we're told with the Gunner feat that we don't have disadvantage on ranged attacks when we're within 5 feet of an enemy, similar to the crossbow expert feat, right? Typically, if you're making ranged attacks and you're within 5 feet of an enemy, you're going to have disadvantage, but we don't with this feat, and we actually will be making some good use of that, as you will see later. The other things that we get from this feat, the proficiency with firearms and ignoring loading property with firearms or whatever, I do not plan on using at all. You might, and if so, more power to you, but we're not using guns. Sorry. As for your abilities, I assume, as always, that we're using point buy, but I'm going to recommend taking a 15 dexterity +2 from our racial, +1 from our feat, giving us an 18 dexterity to start, which is really nice, and then just getting a 14 intelligence and a 14 constitution. As for equipment, I would recommend going with the gold buy option here. Actually, fighters get 5d4 times 10 gold if you want, which is going to be about 125 on average. Should let you afford studded leather, a rapier, and a shield, and then your other basic necessities. Pretty standard stuff. For right now, we just really kind of want to stay alive. Our armor class with studded leather is as good as it would be with chainmail, thanks to our +4 dexterity modifier, right? Because studded leather is a 12 AC +4. Add a shield, and we're at an 18 armor class at level 1, which is really good, although we will be dropping the shield later. We need a finesse weapon, of course, because we're dexterity based, and we prefer a rapier and a shield over 2 short swords, not just for the better armor class, but also because as a level 1 fighter, we get a fighting style, and we're going with dueling. This character will not be dual wielding, and so adding that +2 damage to our attacks that we make when we have a one-handed weapon and no other weapon in our other hand is a nice little bump to our damage. Finally, as a fighter at level 1, we get Second Wind, which allows us to heal ourselves as a bonus action once per short rest. It's a 1d10 plus fighter level per short rest that we get to heal, which is really quite nice, especially early on for our survivability. At level 2. Now, I am just as anxious to get to our Bladesinger levels as you are, but if we're building for Nova damage, which we are, it's really hard not to take another level of fighter right now. I mean, Action Surge is just right there. So yes, as a fighter level 2, we get Action Surge. Once per short rest, you get 2 actions on a single turn instead of 1. It's you still only get 1 bonus action, right? But otherwise, you can do everything that an action allows you to do. It's amazing, and it's hard to beat when you're building for burst damage. Now, at level 3, I am just as anxious to get to our Bladesinger levels as you are, but if we're building for Nova damage, which we are, it's really hard not to take another level of fighter right now. I mean, our subclass is just right there. So, okay, yes, at level 3, fighters get their martial archetype, their subclass, right? And we are going with, can you guess? Not Eldritch Knight. You thought I was going to say Eldritch Knight, didn't you? We're going with Battlemaster. I love Battlemasters, and let's read about them. We are told this: those who emulate the archetypal Battlemaster employ martial techniques passed down through generations. To a Battlemaster, combat is an academic field, sometimes including subjects beyond battle, such as weaponsmithing and calligraphy. Not every fighter absorbs the lessons of history, theory, and artistry that are reflected in the Battlemaster archetype, but those who do are well-rounded fighters of great skill and knowledge. I actually really love the flavor of this archetype as much as anything. You know, with the academic emphasis, it fits, I think, super nicely with a wizard who's maybe kind of bookish, or at least thought of as bookish, higher intelligence, you know what I mean? I think it's a wonderful pairing. So as a Battlemaster at level 3, we get combat superiority, right? So we get 4 superiority dice, that is, per short rest, which are d8s, and we use those to fuel special combat maneuvers, because we are Henry Heimlich, tank commander. Okay, so as for those maneuvers that we get, I love these maneuvers so much. We only get 3 of them. I want all of them, and it makes me sad. But anyway, for each weapon attack you make, you can add 1, and only 1 per attack, 1 maneuver. There's no reason why you can't use multiple maneuvers per turn, right? So you could potentially use up all 4 of your superiority dice in the same turn, so long as you had at least 4 attacks that you could add superiority dice to. Capiche? Okay. As for what maneuvers we take, I'm going to say you absolutely have to take Quick Toss, and I'll explain why later. I'm also going to say you really, really ought to take Trip Attack. This tells us that when we hit a creature with a melee attack, we can add our superiority die to the damage, and if they are large or smaller, they have to make a strength save against our maneuver save, which can be based on strength or dex. We choose dex, obviously, dexterity. So our DC at this point is a 14, which is actually pretty good for a level 3 character. And if the enemy fails their check, they are knocked prone. This, of course, means that attacks made against them from within 5 feet away will be made with advantage. More on that later. For our third maneuver, I would say pick your favorite. For me, it would probably either be Riposte, which lets us use our reaction to make an attack on an enemy if they miss us, which will happen quite often, I think, in our case. And then we get to add the superiority die in damage if we hit. Precision attack would be another good alternative. It lets us add a d8 to our attack roll, so not damage, but the actual to hit, right, for those really hard to hit targets. Or pushing attack actually would be one that I would consider, and I'll explain why in a minute. At level 4, I am just as anxious to get to our Bladesinger levels as you are, but if we're building for Nova damage, which we are, it's really hard not to take another level of fighter right now. Just kidding. Okay, I actually am sorely tempted to go Fighter 4 here to cap our dexterity, but then I would want Fighter 5 for extra attack, and where does the madness end, right? Now, some of you are going to think that I'm crazy for multiclassing before we get to extra attack. I can appreciate the sentiment. The reality is, this is my least favorite thing about this build, the delay on our extra attack. Unquestionably, it hurts our sustained damage. You could definitely start Bladesinger, go all the way to 6 probably when you get your extra attack, and then take, fighter levels if you really wanted to. In a nutshell, doing this would cause our sustained damage to be slightly better at level 6, and our burst damage to be slightly worse at level 6. You'd also miss out, of course, on Constitution saving throw proficiency, probably forcing you to take Warcaster or Resilient Constitution at some point, taking up a very valuable feat or ability score increase. We're building this character for Nova damage, so this is the route that we're taking. You do what you want, and then let me know in the comments how disappointed you are in me, as one or two of you like to do occasionally. What are you, my dad? Anyways, as always, I'd encourage you to spend some time thinking about why your character is taking wizard levels here, especially if that's something that your DM encourages, right? You can't really multi-class unless you've got a good story reason for it, right? So perhaps there is a magic user in your party, and you two have bonded over some intellectual pursuit, or, it's given you insight into the way their mind works, it's piqued your curiosity, you want to learn more about the arcane, or maybe, my favorite, in your own study of the great wars and battles of history, you came across an account of a platoon of elven Bladesingers who famously held off an overwhelming force of enemy orcs, right? Outnumbered 5-1, the Bladesingers, held the line so that the rest of their battalion could escape. Entranced by the tale, you start to try to learn more about this ancient practice of blade singing. Maybe you find a book that teaches you more, or a guide who can teach you so that you can experience that power firsthand. Regardless of your reasons, we're taking wizard levels now. So at level 4, we are a wizard 1, and we get spells, of course. As for cantrips, I would be sure to pick up Toll the Dead. I think it's a good ranged damage, sustainable ranged damage option when you can't get in range to use melee. Of course, we have a pretty poor intelligence spell save DC here. It's only a 12, and it's a wisdom saving throw that they get to make against our DC. So you might be better off with a ranged weapon if you need to make a ranged attack, like a gun, I suppose, right? There's an option. But anyway, I would also make sure you grab Green Flame Blade or Booming Blade, or maybe both. They both allow us to do extra damage when we hit with a melee weapon, once we hit level 5 anyway. More on that in a minute. And then just your other favorite cantrip. And tell me why it's Prestidigitation in the comments. As for first level spells, you're going to want Find Familiar, because you are a wizard, and all wizards must have a pet, as we all know. So it's a ritual to cast. It lets you basically summon a pet. That's awesome. You can use it for scouting and things, but then also during combat, they can take the help action, which gives you, or potentially an ally, advantage on your first attack against the enemy that your familiar is essentially distracting and helping against, right? As far as what kind of familiar to get, I always recommend the owl, because they have the flyby feature, which means that they could swoop in, distract the enemy, and then fly away without taking an attack of opportunity on their turn. You will want the shield spell, I think, for sure. As a reaction, if you get hit, it lets you throw up a magical shield, essentially raising your armor class by 5 and potentially causing that attack to miss. And then your AC stays that high until your turn. So really, really strong first level ability for defense. Absorb Elements is another important one, I think. Again, as a reaction, it lets you have resistance to a bunch of damage types, right? Acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. Did I miss one? Verbal abuse? I'd like to have resistance to that. Anyway, also, with Absorb Elements, when you resist that certain damage type, then on your next attack you get to add a little extra damage of that damage type to your attack. I'd maybe take Magic Missile for a reliable range damage option, and maybe Mage Armor. Why maybe? Isn't 13 better than 12? Right, so Mage Armor lets you have a 13 armor class if you're not wearing any other armor, plus your Dex modifier, of course, and Studded Leather is only a 12. It's not a slam dunk still, in my opinion. especially right now with only 2 first level spell slots. First of all, Mage Armor only lasts for 8 hours. It depends on your table, but that could potentially not even last an entire adventuring day, right? And that's annoying, and it might force you to sort of try and guess when you should be casting this, or take up an entire round of combat if you wait till combat starts to cast it, and that's painful. Also, it does take a spell slot, and we don't have a lot of them right now, right? So yeah, you might have one more armor class with Mage Armor, but there will be times where the enemy, hits you by 2 or 3 or 4 above your AC, and you're gonna feel like, man, I wish I had another spell slot so I could cast Shield and make that attack miss. Of course, there will also be times where you don't use Mage Armor and you get hit just by 1 more than your AC, and you'll be like, ugh, I wish I would have cast Mage Armor on myself. So anyway, I personally prefer to save my spell slots and take my chances without Mage Armor if I have studded leather, at least until I get more spell slots. But you do what you want. Try to get some +1 studded leather armor as soon as possible so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Also, at level 1, we get Arcane Recovery. Once per day, after a short rest, you can recover spell slots equal to or less than half your wizard level, rounded up. So, level 1 spell slot for us right now. It's a very nice ability, and you will be grateful to have this throughout your career. All right, at level 5, we are a Wizard 2. First up, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade now do 1d8 per attack on the initial attack when we use them. And since we don't yet have extra attack, we're probably going to be using one of these 2 cantrips for our action each turn, unless you're casting a different spell like Sleep or something. It's not amazing damage, but it does make not having extra attack hurt a little bit less, right? If we stuck with Fighter all the way till level 5 at this point, we'd get extra attack, yes, and so that would be like a d8 plus 4 for Dex plus 2 for Dueling, times 2, right? For a total of 2d8 plus 12 total damage that we do with 2 attacks. Instead, we're going to get, 1d8 for the attack, plus 4 plus 2, plus another d8, since we're using Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, for a total of 2d8 plus 6. So it is less damage. It's not that terrible, and better yet, if we're using Booming Blade, for example, and they move on their turn, then they're going to take an extra 2d8 of damage, right? That's how Booming Blade works, and for that reason, you might want to consider taking Pushing Maneuver as your 3rd Battlemaster maneuver, because you make an attack and if they fail their strength save, it pushes them up to 15 feet away from you. So, if you're using that on a melee enemy, for example, then on their turn they have to stand there doing nothing, looking stupid, which is big win for you and your party, or they move up to, attack you or somebody else, taking an additional 2d8 damage. So, anyway, at level 2 as a wizard, we also get our Arcane Tradition, our subclass. And of course, we are going with Blade Singing. So let's read about Blade Singers. Blade Singers master a tradition of wizardry that incorporates swordplay and dance. Originally created by elves, this tradition has been adopted by non-elf practitioners who honor and expand on the elven ways. In combat, a Blade Singer uses a series of intricate, elegant maneuvers that fend off harm and allow the Blade Singer to channel magic into devastating attacks and a cunning defense. Many who have observed a Blade Singer at work remember the display as one of the more beautiful experiences in their life, a glorious dance accompanied by a singing blade. I asked in my 2.0 Blade Singer video what song you guys sang when you activated your Blade song, and I did get a lot of crap from some of you for this. Actually, it's the blade that sings, not you, which I'm sure is true, but I still always sing Enya's Ebude whenever I activate it, and many of you recalled that and picked up on it when I posted my little sneak peek into this video a couple of days ago as a short. Anyway, good job, you guys. Maybe my friends only think it's my character singing when it's actually my blade. Anyway, at level 2, as a Blade Singer, we get the Blade Song feature, which tells us that as long as we aren't wearing medium or heavy armor, using a shield, or using 2 hands to make a weapon attack, we can invoke our Blade Song, which graces us with supernatural speed, agility, and focus. Costs a bonus action, lasts for a minute, and it increases our movement speed by 10, gives us advantage on acrobatic checks, gives us a bump to our concentration checks equal to our intelligence modifier, which is 2 for now, and bumps our armor class by the same amount. We can use it proficiency bonus times per day, so that's 3 for us right now, which should be enough to get most of us through an entire adventuring day based on the feedback you guys have given me on how many combats you typically see in a given day. Obviously, for some of us, we're going to see more than 3 combats in a given day, and so we're going to have to be strategic and maybe stand at the backs, when we don't have a Bladesong use available, and throw spells from range. But that's okay. We're still a wizard. I absolutely love the flavor of this ability. We get some really nice defensive buffs that really help us wade into the thick of the fight without as much concern as we would otherwise have. Right now, if we were using mage armor and we had our Bladesong up, we'd have a 19 armor class, bumping up all the way to 24 if we had, a spell slot available for shield, and a +7 to our concentration checks. So we're very rarely going to be dropping concentration now, and we're pretty hard to hit. So that's awesome. All right, at level 6, we're a wizard 3, and this is where it all starts to come together. So we get 2nd level spells. There are a lot of fantastic ones. I want to highlight 3. Mirror Image can be a great defensive spell. It takes an action to cast, it does not require concentration, and creates 3 duplicate illusory images of you. When a creature targets you with an attack, you roll a d20 to see if they would target one of your images instead. On paper, it's fantastic. I'll admit, though, that in practice, especially at higher levels, its usefulness becomes less. The problem is the image's armor class is only 10 plus our dexterity modifier. And so there will often be times when an enemy goes to attack you, you roll the die because you have your mirror images up. Oh, yep, they're going to attack one of my mirror images instead. Great. The enemy makes a roll, and it's a roll that wouldn't have hit you because your armor class is fantastic, but it does hit your mirror image and destroys it. And that feels bad. It feels kind of wasteful. And especially at higher levels when you get, better ability scores and magic armor and things, and the monsters get higher and higher plus to hit, they're almost always going to hit your mirror image, and oftentimes in cases where they would not have hit you, right? And that's frustrating. That said, I still recommend it, especially at lower levels. There will be plenty of times when it's going to really save your bacon. Misty Step is a fantastic option for our mobility, of course. It lets us teleport up to 30 feet to a space we can see as a bonus action. And then, of course, there is Shadow Blade, right? Be still my beating heat. I wrote heat in my notes. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds provocative. I like it. Anyway, Shadow Blade. So you weave together threads of shadow to create a sword of solidified gloom in your hand. If there's a better description of a spell out there, I don't know what it is. It counts as a simple melee weapon. We are proficient with it. It has the finesse, light, and thrown properties. It does 2d8 psychic damage on a hit, and it scales. If you make your attacks with it in dim light or darkness, then you do so with advantage. And if you drop or throw it, you can make it reappear in your hand next turn as a bonus action. So, from here on, this is how our Nova round looks. Okay, you attack with Shadow Blade, applying a maneuver, probably trip attack. You action surge, and you attack again, applying another maneuver. And then as a bonus action, and I've got to give props to the viewer, Balkan, I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. I'll write it right there. But they gave me this idea, so thank you. You use the Quick Toss maneuver, which tells us this. As a bonus action, you can expend 1 superiority die and make a ranged attack with a weapon that has the thrown property. And Shadow Blade has the thrown property. If you hit, add the superiority die to the weapon's damage roll. That is super happy times right there. So before I do a damage report, we need to discuss a couple of things, right? First of all, advantage. We're told that we get advantage when attacking with the Shadow Blade in dim light or darkness, right? Of course, you're not always going to be in dim light or darkness. Depending on your campaign, it might be incredibly common, as I've experienced at times, or it might be incredibly rare, as I've also experienced at times, right? Now, maybe you could put together a party and make a plan from the get-go, right, of like nocturnal characters. I don't know, an assassin rogue, a drow, elf, a kobold, yourself, a bunch of people who really like dim light and darkness, and who very much do not like bright light, especially sunlight. Call yourselves the Night Owls and have fun with it. Alternatively, maybe you bring a Twilight Cleric with you, so you can always have dim light. I almost did a team-up build with the Twilight Cleric for this episode, actually, but I decided to hold off on that for now, so now I have to wait a really long time so that it feels like when I do that team-up build, it's a fresh and interesting idea. Fortunately, we have some workarounds that make me feel okay about assuming that we're going to have advantage on our attack. So first of all, we have our familiar that at most tables should allow you to get advantage on your first attack that you make, right? Second, if we make that first attack and apply trip attack, we're very likely to knock our target prone, meaning that we will have advantage on subsequent attacks that turn. Third, yes, this will even apply to our thrown bonus action using quick toss, because even though most characters have disadvantage when making a ranged attack and there's a hostile creature within 5 feet of them, we took the gunner feat, which not only lets us start with an 18 dexterity, but also tells us that we very much do not have disadvantage in that scenario. Truly, you have a dizzying intellect. Wait till I get going. Where was I? Ranged attacks with the gunner feat. Right. And so just in case you're wondering, making a ranged attack against a prone enemy doesn't necessarily impose disadvantage, right? The wording on the prone condition is this. An attack roll against the creature has advantage if the attacker is within 5 feet of the creature. Otherwise, the attack roll has disadvantage. We are within 5 feet, and so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. So we should enjoy advantage. Now, sure, sometimes the enemy will make their save and they won't go prone. In that case, try again with your next attack until they do. Regardless, between the dim light and darkness, your familiar, your trip attack, I think the likelihood of you having advantage on most of your attacks most of the time is pretty dang high, so I'm going to assume that you've got it when I crunch the numbers. The second thing we need to address here, what about Booming Blade? Are you going to assume that Booming Blade can be used with Shadow Blade? You know what? I just am. I've gone back and forth on this for months now, but I polled you guys here on my channel and on Twitter, and of the over 2,700 responses that I got, more than 70% of you said that at your table, you can use Booming Blade with Shadow Blade. You can make an attack, you can cast Booming Blade and use Shadow Blade as the weapon that you use to make that attack that is required to do so with the Booming Blade spell, right? I know, rules as written, most of you are going to argue, and with good reason, that it doesn't work, that it has to be a weapon that's worth at least 1 silver piece, and Shadow Blade doesn't qualify, etc., 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 and I get it. I'm very familiar with the arguments, believe me. That said, most of you seem to be able to do this. Even Jeremy Crawford himself, who I appreciate, his opinions are no longer considered official rulings, has said that he would allow it at his table. To me, it's a decent enough sample size and a big enough majority that I'm just going to go ahead and assume that we're using Booming Blade with Shadow Blade here. If you are in that about 20%, little less than 20% of people who said that it was not allowed at their table, I apologize. These numbers are going to be a little bit off for you. Just subtract a little bit of damage from the numbers that I'm about to present. Okay, so yes, then, for the damage report on our Nova round, we're going 2d8 for Shadow Blade, plus 1d8 for Booming Blade, plus 1d8 for your maneuver, your superiority die, plus 4 for our dexterity, plus 2 for the dueling fighting style. Action Surge, do it all again, and then bonus action, Quick Toss, the Shadow Blade, for 2d8 plus 1d8 for the superiority die. We don't get Booming Blade on that attack, of course. Plus 4 for dexterity, plus 2 for the dueling fighting style. I just love the image here. Attack, and like spin and backhand throw your Shadow Blade at your enemy, right? And yes, in case you're wondering, the dueling fighting style damage should still apply to that quick toss attack, even though we're throwing it, because it is, at the end of the day, an attack made with a melee weapon in one hand and with no other weapons in your other hand. Jeremy Crawford has even tweeted about this on a couple of occasions. Look it up if you need to. We will be doing then a total of 11d8 plus 18 damage, and all of those attacks are made with advantage. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, that would be 72 damage on average in that round. And against an enemy with a 15 armor class, it would be 64 damage in that round, and that is excellent. It's pretty much better than any other Nova build that I've done at this level, except the Needler. The Needler, there we go. Who coincidentally was also taking advantage of quick toss and using thrown weapons, though it was a very different build. For those who don't know, I compare my builds to each other. Check the video description. You'll see a spreadsheet and graphs and geek out on numbers to your heart's content. The good news is we should be able to do this level of damage at least once per short rest. And other than Shadow Blade, we're still preserving our spell slots for other things. We're blowing through our superiority dice, right? But we're still holding on to a lot of our resources. And our sustained DPR is still going to be pretty decent here. Now, all of that said, there is, of course, one big con to our approach here that I would be remiss to not mention. This character, and frankly most characters who rely on a concentration spell for at least part of their damage, it takes a minute to ramp up, right? Man, I really wish Wizards of the Coast would allow us to use a bonus action as an action if we really wanted to. So this would only take one round to be, firing on all cylinders because, yes, Blade Song requires a bonus action, right? And so assuming that we want to have Blade Song up before the fight begins or before we jump into melee, which we do, we wouldn't actually be able to do our full Nova round until round 3. And that stinks, no question. It's not to say that it isn't still a lot of damage, but the earlier a Nova build can blow up their target, the more useful they are, right? So you very well may want to do something like this. Round 1, Blade Song, and maybe cast like Mirror Image, or even an offensive spell, right, as your action. Round 2, you'd cast Shadow Blade as your bonus action. You go in, Booming Blade with a maneuver, Action Surge, Booming Blade with a maneuver. Round 3, Booming Blade with a maneuver. Again, Quick Toss, throw your Shadow Blade as a bonus action. That spreads your Nova damage out over 2 rounds, but at least it gets you pumping out some pretty big damage a little earlier than waiting all the way until round 3 to go all out. You figure it out. Regardless, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of damage. All right, at level 7, we're a wizard 4, and we get an ability score increase or feat finally. I want to bump our dexterity and cap it at 20. It's just great for both our armor class and also for our damage, of course. Not to mention our saving throws, etc. At level 8, we are a wizard 5, and we finally get 3rd level spells. First of all, 3rd level spells are great for us specifically because if we upcast Shadow Blade as a 3rd level spell, it now does 3d8 damage instead of 2d8 on a hit. Of course, from here, it only goes up for every 2 spell levels though, so we don't get really any benefit from casting it as a 4th level spell, but then it goes up again as a 5th level spell, right? Beyond that though, there are just too many good 3rd level spells to spend a lot of time with here. I mean, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, Tiny Hut, Thunderstep, Fly, Catnap, right? I will just maybe focus on 2. Fireball, of course, 8d6 damage in a 20-foot radius is going to be a really nice to have in plenty of situations. I love, one of my favorite tactics actually is round 1, start my Blade Song and throw out a Fireball. And just, really soften up a big group of enemies. And then round 2, summon your Shadow Blade and just jump in and, start mopping up all of those half-health enemies that are left. The second spell that I will mention is Blink. So this is an amazing defensive spell, not to mention just super cool and a lot of fun. It doesn't require concentration. It lasts for a minute, and then after each of your turns, you roll a d20, and on an 11 or better, you vanish into the ethereal plane, reappearing on your turn within 10 feet of where you vanished. The unreliability of it makes me wince a little bit. It's only a 50% chance, right, that you're going to actually vanish when you really want to. And also, of course, depending on your party, they might be better off with you sort of sticking around in this plane and keeping the enemies occupied with how hard to hit you can be. Still, it's a really fun arrow to have in your quiver. At level 9, we are a Wizard 6, and we finally get extra attack. I know, the delay was painful. And again, if you'd rather wait until Wizard 6 before you start taking your fighter levels, go ahead. Anyway, post-Tasha's, this is fabulous and amazing because we not only get to make 2 attacks if we want, but one of those can be a cantrip. That opens up all kinds of cool, fun things we could do if we wanted, but I'm just going to assume that we will be making like 1 normal attack and then making a Booming Blade attack. And by the way, whenever I say Booming Blade, obviously you could just as easily use Green Flame Blade instead. You know, we're not doing a lot with this build to try and sort of force the enemy to move and take that extra damage from Booming Blade, so oftentimes Green Flame Blade will be better if there's another enemy standing next to the one you're attacking, right? That enemy, that second enemy will take some extra damage from Green Flame Blade, which is really great. But anyway, if using Shadow Blade and Booming Blade together is not allowed at your table, I would just make a second attack with the Shadow Blade. Unless, of course, like your first attack kills them and you can't get in range of another enemy to make a second melee attack, and so you maybe would throw out a Toll the Dead or something like that. Let's do a damage report at level 9. So now our Nova round got a whole lot better, right? We've capped our dexterity, our Shadow Blade damage has gone up by 1d8, and we're getting 2 more attacks with it than we were last time. Now, keep in mind that you only have 4 superiority dice, right, per short rest. You need to save one of those superiority dice for your bonus action Quick Toss. So this means that on our Nova round, we're making 1 attack with our 3d8 Shadow Blade, plus 1d8 for a maneuver, plus 7, and then extra attack is going to be Booming Blade for all of that, plus 1d8. Then we'd Action Surge, and we would repeat all of that minus 1d8 on one of the attacks because we don't want to spend our 4th superiority die. And then bonus action, Quick Toss for a 3d8 Shadow Blade plus 1d8 superiority die plus 7. Right, so 5 attacks total, all with a Shadow Blade, for a total of 21d8 plus 35 damage. That is yummy. Against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would do 138 damage on average at level 9. Granted, that's just in one big round, but still. And against an enemy with a 16 armor class, it would be 127 damage on average. Compared to other Nova damage builds that I've done at this level, we're ahead of everyone, except, surprisingly, the Mercy Monk. Come on, monks, let's go. It is very, very close. But anyway, and also the Evocation Blaster. I think I still have cards to link here. Although with the Evocation Blaster, their damage was total damage against 3 targets, right? But still. One great thing about this build that I haven't mentioned, we get a weaponized bonus action thanks to Quick Toss without needing to have our hands full, and so we don't need Warcaster. And with proficiency in Constitution saving throws, it feels a lot less important of a feat for us to have, right? Now, you might want to take it sooner or later anyway, and if so, go for it. As usual, I'm going to push the damage as much as I can and let you decide where you want to scale back in the name of survivability and defense, etc. Okay, so with extra attack and 3rd level spells in place, some of you may be wondering, should we take Paladin levels here in order to pour on some smite damage too, right? That's what burst damage melee characters do, isn't it? On the one hand, believe me, I would love to, because I love doing things that are ridiculous in D&D, I suppose. But here is the problem. In order to multi-class with the Paladin, you need a 13 strength and a 13 charisma. Those are dump stats for us currently, right? So in order to get there, we would basically have to make Constitution a dump stat for us. Literally, we would need an 8 con if we wanted to maintain a 14 intelligence anyway and be a dex-based character. I'm not lying, I almost did this anyway. It would be so freaking awesome and hilarious. A D6 character with a -1 modifier to their Constitution. You would get 3 hit points per level. Not to mention the negative impact that it would have on our Constitution saving throws and our concentration checks, right? I mean, but talk about the ultimate glass cannon. And I love glass cannons. I seriously want to do this for a one-shot sometime. You'd be hard to hit, but if you got hit, you'd basically die. but man, the amount of damage you could dish out with a smite on all of your melee attacks, right, would be so fabulous. That said, those 2 paladin levels that you'd have to take in order to get smite would somewhat delay our ability to upcast Shadowblade, among other things. So yes, while an extra 2d8 and more per melee attack during your Nova round would be fantastic, it would burn through our resources a lot more quickly, and it would be a fairly moderate bump to our burst damage at the cost of a significant amount of sustained damage per round, not to mention our survivability, of course. Still, if you want to try it out, please do so and let me know the tale of your stunning and glorious demise. We're sticking with wizard levels. So at level 10, we're a wizard 7, and we get 4th level spells. As will be the case for most of the rest of the way, I'm just going to say pick your favorites here. You're a wizard. Don't forget to be a wizard when the situation calls for it. And also, because the focus of this particular build is for burst damage, I actually can imagine being a little more inclined to step back off the front lines after your big Nova round and throw out some control and area damage, etc., spells. So yeah, get your dimension doors, your polymorphs, your firewalls, etc., and have fun with them. At level 11, we are a wizard 8. We get another ability score increase or feat. And I'm going to bump intelligence here, I think, taking it from a 14 to a 16. It feels really good to finally be able to do that, especially if we're going to be doing more things now that rely on our spell difficulty check. For the record, I think the number one magic item that I would try to get on this character, if I could get it early, would be a headband of intellect. That raises your intelligence to a 19, and we would get so much mileage out of that. Anyway, some might argue here that we should take Warcaster at this level. Advantage on our concentration checks is nice, as well as casting a spell as an opportunity attack, like Booming Blade. Right? It's not a bad idea, but intelligence raises for us our armor class, our concentration checks when blade singing, as well as our damage later, and then all of the other wizard things that you need intelligence for. So yeah, I'm bummed. At level 12, we're a wizard 9, and we get 5th level spells. Man, I love 5th level spells. Animate objects is overpowered. If you wanted to use it instead of Shadowblade for your concentration, you could get your, bag of silver coins going, and then on your burst round go in with a rapier and make attacks and add superiority dice and booming blade, and then action surge and do it all again, and then machine gun your target, right, with your animated objects. Your Nova round damage going that route would be about 25% less total damage, though. But of course, in subsequent rounds, your damage would likely be better, assuming, of course, that the enemy is not resistant to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, which, again, at this level especially, they're more likely to be resistant, probably, than otherwise, I think. Depending on your table, depending on what kind of enemies your dungeon master is throwing at you, right? But, of course, on the other hand, I'm also not assuming that you have a magical weapon at this point, which, if you wanted it, you very well could have it. So, anyway, you'll have to figure it out. Beyond that, 5th level spells, Hold Monster, Synaptic Static, so good. Wall of Force, Wall of Stone, fantastic. There's so much goodness to choose from here. Pick your favorites. For us, I'm just going to assume that we're upcasting Shadowblade to do 4d8 per attack now. Teehee. At level 13, we are a Wizard 10, and we get Song of Defense. This is a half-decent defense ability, really. When you take damage as a reaction, you can expend a spell slot to reduce that damage by 5 times the spell slot's level. Of course, most of the time, if we're using a reaction in a spell slot for defensive purposes, we're probably using Shield or Absorb elements, and, with only a 1st level spell. And if we can get some mileage out of those, then we should absolutely use them, right? But if the enemy roll to hit us is so high that shield wouldn't help, or worse yet, they get a critical hit on you, or it's a damage type that absorb elements doesn't give resistance to, like psychic or necrotic or something, this ability can be a lifesaver. Okay, so level 13, damage report. Not much has changed for us tactics-wise since level 9. We've simply picked up more damage on our Shadow Blade, more damage on our Booming Blade, and our proficiency bonus has gone up by 1. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 173 damage during our Nova round, and against an enemy with a 17 armor class, it would be 159 damage. All right, coming down the home stretch here at level 14, we are a Wizard 11, and we get level 6 spells. I mean, Chain Lightning and Disintegrate, sure, but Contingency, Mass Suggestion, level 6 spells start to get a little loco. So maybe, let me just mention Tensor's Transformation. Some people poo-poo this spell. Poo-poo. But I kind of love it. The biggest drawback to it is that while you're using it, requires concentration. You can't cast spells, right? But you can still use Blade Song. And especially if you have some good magic weapons here, like a couple of good short swords. I know that we've just been going rapier from here, but that way you could do a bonus action, offhand attack and do the 2-weapon fighting thing. It would be really strong sustained damage, right? You get advantage on all attacks while you're transformed. You get 50 temporary hit points, which is a lot. And then your weapon attacks each do 2d12 extra damage, right? Anyway, can be great for sustained damage, but if you don't want to use that, that's fine. Just pick your favorites. There's tons of good ones. At level 15, we're a Wizard 12, and we get another ability score increase or feat. I'm going to take another bump to our intelligence, so we're at an 18, and that just makes us better at pretty much everything. At level 16, we are a Wizard 13, and we get 7th level spells. I mean, Force Cage, Simulacrum, Reverse Gravity, right? There's too many good ones. And yes, as many of you have probably noticed, I don't really ever talk about Simulacrum, depending on where you're from. It's just one of those spells that, sure, if you can get this high a level and find enough ice and snow and have 12 hours of downtime and 1,500 gold worth of powdered ruby, or barring all of those things, have access to the Wish spell, and you can somehow manage to keep the thing alive after creating it, and your DM actually allows it at their table, then yeah, knock yourself out, right? Duplicate yourself and do twice the damage. Or, I guess, probably, if it were me, duplicate yourself, have them stand at the back and cast haste on you and firebolt stuff, since they can't regain spent spell slots, right? And they're fragile. I don't know. It's so potentially insanely powerful and game-breaking and expensive and filled with a lot of will this work questions that I just am probably never going to use it in one of my builds. Sorry. Maybe I'll change my mind one day. But I'm just going to assume that we're using our 7th level spell slot to upcast Shadow Blade for 5d8 damage per hit. So at level 17, we are a Wizard 14, and Booming Blade does 3d8 per hit now, and Green Flame Blade as well, of course. And then we get Song of Victory. I was tempted to take Fighter to 4 here, just so I could cap our intelligence at 20, but I just have to have this ability. I do. It's the Pinnacle Bladesinger ability. It lets us add our intelligence modifier to every melee weapon attack while Bladesong is active. And that's just awesome, and I can't pass it up. So, final damage report then. Again, not much has changed tactics-wise. We've just gotten another bump to Booming Blade, another bump to Shadow Blade, and now we get to add our intelligence modifier to all of our attacks. So, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would do 227 damage on average during our Nova round, and against an enemy with an 18 armor class, it would be 209 damage. So, final thoughts. Man, this was a fun one. No lie, I seriously would have no objection, I think, to getting like Ezra in our Tales of Veneria campaign, so I could roll this character. If you have not watched our actual play, live play D&D sessions, please check them out there. Would appreciate it. But anyway, yeah, I would do it. I'd play a 3rd Bladesinger in a heartbeat, and I would love to play one that was focused on Nova damage like this. I love the synergy that we get from the gunner feat and the quick toss, maneuver. I love dancing and weaving in combat with my shadowy lightsaber. I love the idea of blowing up an enemy in a big Nova round and then blinking into the ethereal plane only to reappear, a moment later, 10 feet away and throwing up a wall of force to control the battlefield. I love it. I can't wait to play another Bladesinger. And so, yeah, that's the show for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys dearly, and thanks for all of your support. Please do all of the things like subscribe and consider joining the channel even if you think it worth supporting. But regardless, thanks so much. Have a fantastic day, and we will see you soon. Take care.